All right, good morning. We're going to start getting going here. Obviously, the earlier session ended a little bit late. We wanted to give folks a moment to enjoy their break and join us here. So if you're in the back, feel free to move up a little bit closer if you'd like to interact more. And welcome back to Track 2, Patient's Role in Drug Discovery. My name is Scott Schliebner. I'm Vice President of Scientific Affairs at PRA Health Sciences. I lead our Rare Disease Center of Excellence and happy to be partnering with Global Genes and supporting this event. We're excited about this track. As a reminder, as all of these, they'll be streamed live through Platform Q. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but you will be recorded. And then without further ado, let's get moving here. I'd like to introduce our first session here in Track 2, how to talk and engage with researchers and what questions to ask. And we have a fantastic panel of speakers here. And now we have slides. Excellent. First, we're going to get started with Dr. Margie Frazier. She is the Executive Director of the Batten Disease Support and Research Association. And then we will be followed by Grossman, parent advocate for ADCY5.org. And then we are joined by our esteemed moderator, Carrie Ostrea from Global Genes, who will give us a hand. Exactly. Perfect. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Frazier, and we have clickers. You want to sit right there? You want?
I'm mic'd.
You're mic'd. You don't need this.
I'd just like to welcome everybody. It's glad to see you, and I can't get over how great this event is. So kudos to Global Genes. This is a topic.
Thank you, Nicole.
That's right.
Hi to Nicole, everybody. She's the reason we're all here.
Hi, Nicole. I'm really passionate about this topic, actually. I have a little story that happened last night at 5:30. I was on the phone with one of our moms from Durango, Colorado. She couldn't get somebody to call her back, and it was very hard for her because she'd lost her son, and she had gone through many protocols to make sure that his brain and brainstem were donated because his form of Batten disease was incredibly rare. And she couldn't get anybody to call her back after the pathologist had broken her son's back to get the brainstem out and harvest the brain and section it and make it sure it was perfect. And to a scientist, that might be a brain and a brainstem to do research on, but to her, it was Stephen, who she had cared for 41 years. And so this is very important to me, this topic, that researchers and moms and dads and other caregivers have access to researchers to get their questions answered. And so to start, I'll just dive right in a little bit with a preface that I wrote these few slides. These are talking points. These are just a little note-taking I did because I get calls all the time as a patient advocacy director about how to reach a researcher. So engage and talk to researchers for what purposes? There could be many reasons you'd want to talk to a researcher. So you could learn more about your child's disease, find out about life-saving research and trials. Maybe you've lost a child or an adult with a rare disease and you want to leave a legacy and you want to do some research in their memory, which is a very profound and lovely thing to do. Or expand the current pipeline of research. That you have some ideas, you have some connections, you have the will and the means to make a difference. There are many reasons you might want to talk to researchers. So where do I start? The main questions I get from new parents and even older parents, older as in I've been in the rare disease world for a long time. I want to talk to somebody, and there's a pause, and typically I get, I don't know what to say, I feel stupid. Okay, we're going to turn that around today. Researchers, are there any researchers in the audience? Oh, excellent. I can assure you that they put their pants on just like you did today. They have thoughts and feelings and families and a deep interest in rare disease, or they wouldn't be here today. They're just like you. And so let's just dispel this idea that because people have PhDs, I've got one, I manage to talk to rare disease patients all day, that somehow they're different than you. They're not. They want to hear from you. They might not be great at returning phone calls sometimes, but that could be me too. We've dispelled that myth that somehow you should be afraid. And the other one is, I don't know what to say. So let's address that a little bit. I think there are some things that can help you feel more confident before you reach out to a researcher when you just really don't know. So online research is a great thing. Talking with other parents. And if you can't reach other parents, there may be a patient advocacy group like ours. You can call me because I have these conversations all the time. If there isn't a patient advocacy group for your disease, there may be one that's like it. For example, in the Lysosomal Disease Network, I think we have about 50 lysosomal diseases. So before there was a Batten Disease Support and Research Association, we were talking to TASACs because they've been around for 60 years. So it could be that there is a like organization of people who know researchers who work in neurology or nephrology or bone diseases, so you can begin to understand what the hub looks like. YouTube. People do lectures all the time and post them on YouTube, so you can learn that way too. And TED Talks. If you're lucky, there's a great researcher out there doing TED Talks that is in your area that you can learn more about the disease. I've already covered number 2. I think it's important to know too sort of what you're asking about. Dr. Ring talked about that yesterday. I thought his talk was phenomenal. To sort of understand what it is you want to talk about. In our world, in Batten disease, we have, in our world in Batten disease, we have a variety of ways that we're looking at treatments. So gene therapy, enzyme replacement therapy, small molecule therapies. All of these are different modes, and there are different researchers who do work in all of these areas. You know, we have pathologists who look at how cells live and die. There are all kinds of people involved in the world. There typically isn't just one researcher. There's a panoply of them. Did I have any? Okay, good. Feel better. I thought I might have skipped one. Another way to find out more about the world of research, I was really glad that Dr. Kaufman mentioned this morning the Clinical Trials Transformation Initiative. They're really great. That is an amazing website, and that's why I put it up there. There's all kinds of really great information there about how clinical trials work, patient engagement in clinical trials. It's really great. So I highly recommend it for your own education. The other thing that I think is important, and we keep saying it, you may not feel it, I see it every day, is know your value know your value as a parent or a person with a rare disease to speak out. We've got many advocates in this audience who have spoken out and learned and become good advocates. And so you are valuable. I hope this session helps you feel a little more valuable. And my grandmother always said, fake it till you make it. So, you know, stand a little taller. I'm an advocate. Just breathe it in. I think the last bullet here is that I think especially for new parents, and I say parents all the time because we have kids. Typically in Batten disease we have little kids. it depends on building trust over time. You want to build these relationships, and so coming in with your hair on fire and screaming is maybe what you want to do because you're frustrated because you've tried to talk to people over and over and over again and don't feel successful. That happens. Just keep at it. Keep at it until you find people who are having dialogue with you and expand your network. I think one of the next steps families want to take is funding research and having fundraisers and all that kind of thing. I think it's wise, and Gay probably has some really good information about this as well, is take your time a little bit. Ask around, really do some research. Sometimes I think families will start funding a research because they were nice to them. And that's nice, but you can fund lots of people to be nice to you. You want people who can do research that makes a difference, and especially translational research, who can really move the needle. But I will say, as many of you know, moving the needle can be expensive and lengthy, and we've seen that again and again. And so being in it for the long haul is probably what's in your future. But you can move the needle. Okay, so I'm probably going way over time. My last slide really is about contracts. Our organization for a long time, and we'll celebrate our 30th anniversary next year in 2017. For a long time, we were excited that any researcher would talk to us. And I've been there for 4.5 years. So I think the organization was young, doing great work. They were excited that anybody was talking to them. So they would send them a letter with a $50,000 check and say, "We're so grateful for you. Here, go do some research." And about 3 years ago, we decided to change that. Not that great work wasn't being done, it was. But sometimes we wouldn't get reports, or we never got any information, and people got busy. So we started doing contracts. And I think contracts are really important. And I'll tell you why. A good contract, and I'm happy to send you, by the way, my email will come up soon. I'm happy to send you drafts of contracts. I'm not a lawyer. Should have one on your board, or have a pro bono one close to you who understands contracts. Specifically, if you could get somebody around a medical center who understands IP and that kind of thing, that would be great. Our contracts spell out the goals of the research. We attach the researcher's proposal to the contract. We have a timeline. It spells out how many funds you'll get over the year. We typically do things in a year. And when the schedule of payments is. Our researchers get money up front to start their work. At midterm, with the right report, they get the rest. Some groups do it quarterly. It kind of just depends on what kind of bandwidth you have in your organization. We demand reporting. We demand credit. If they're going to a conference or they're writing a paper, in the bottom of any good research report, they're going to talk about where their funding came from for the research, and BDSRA wants credit. And we should have credit because that money is sacred. These parents went out and ran 5Ks in the rain with 2 sick kids with Batten disease. We get credit, right? And confidentiality. We are very quiet with our dealings with researchers. Typically, we don't. Our conversations with them about what they're working on is confidential until it's published, and we guarantee that with them. And so I am forever grateful for all of the researchers and what we've done over the years, but we want to protect them as well. I'm going to stop and thank you for now. And Gay's going to go, and then I think we have time for questions, right?
I have some questions for you guys.
don't think they're ready for me because I push go. Oh, here we go.
Oh, hers
Oh, I'm good.
See, you've
Okay,
got
here we go.
prettier slides.
Yeah, but you can see I also didn't follow direction and put them in the right format.
Yeah, but you got your beautiful daughter up there.
You're
so-
such a
Right.
rebel.
My name's Gay Grossman, and I'm actually here with my husband, who's in the fourth row back. We work as a team, and we're here because we have a 19-year-old daughter who has a mutation called ADCY5. And we are the second family in the whole world to have this mutation. So the reason that I think it's important to speak to you about our experience in speaking to researchers is because nobody really knew what it was. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the who, what, where, when, and why, and how. Who are the researchers that are studying the disease? So we had one paper when we were given the diagnosis. And on that one paper were a list of names. And that would be the best place for you to start. If there are any studies that you have, and I'd also like to preface all of this with, none of this takes money to contact these people. It takes a lot of time. And it doesn't really take that much knowledge because what you're going to do the entire time is just ask questions. And there's really no dumb question. So you want to find out who the researchers are that are involved in your mutation right now. So how do you know what to ask? Well, just ask them things like, are you involved in this? Have you done a study? Do you know anybody else who's doing a study? Do you know anybody who's looking for a study? So think about right now where you get your resources from, like right now. If you have a problem or you want to talk about your mutation, who do you call? You might call family members. You might ask your doctor. You might ask some clinicians that you see on a regular basis. But keep a list of those people and write them down so that you can look back at them every once in a while. Because even though you have, and I'm going to use my own examples in my own life, my daughter has a friend, and wouldn't you know, the friend's dad is an attorney, and wouldn't you know, he knows a lot about technology, and wouldn't you know, he was willing to help us. So it all starts with things like that. This is what I just talked about earlier. So what's currently happening? Obviously with ADCY5, there wasn't a lot happening if my daughter was the second one diagnosed. So we found different people who were interested in us just by, like I said, asking questions. And I always ask at the end of a conversation, do you know 3 people I should contact? This is where I find information right now. There's always the journal articles. I really get more out of the people listed on the journal article than I do the actual journal article. And I'm going to tell you a little story about Global Genes because I want to, first of all, compliment all of you for being here because this is the best place that you could be at this Global Genes Summit. This is where all of our research started. It all started at a cocktail party 2 years ago at Global Genes. We met a woman named Christina Waters with Rare Science. And she had just started Rare Science, and she asked us, we were just talking about the mutation, talking about our daughter, and we had some papers to give her on ADCY5, but we really didn't have anything going. And she said, why don't I read those papers for you and I can tell you a little bit about what they mean. And I thought, great, it'd be great to have a PhD read these papers and actually tell me what they mean. From that conversation, 2 years later, Christina Waters has helped us build over 40 stem cell lines. So don't disregard anyone that you meet at this meeting. They're not walking around with a white jacket on, so you don't know which ones are the researchers and which ones are the scientists, but everybody who's here is interested in rare disease, and everybody here is willing to help people. So think about different blogs that you go on. The Mighty's a great blog to be connected to. Different newsletters, social media. But also think about who's in your community as far as Global Genes and how you can connect with them. The Cox Grant, are you familiar with the Cox Grant with Global Genes?
Our Cox Prize program, do we have any other families that were part of the Cox Prize program this year? I know Cindy's been involved in the past. That's different than the Impact? Yeah, that's different from the Impact Grant program.
The Cox Grant, all you need to do is go onto the Global Genes website and sign up. And you say, I live in San Diego, California, if you live there, that's where I live. And I would like a student who's interested in rare disease. And so we were assigned to a student at UCLA who was interested in rare disease, and we FaceTimed with her, and my daughter Lily FaceTimed with her, and then she came to visit us. And the whole premise is to engage students who are early on in their medical career in rare disease and get them interested in the process of rare disease and what families are actually going through day to day with their life. It's a great program. I encourage everybody to sign up for it. Get involved in Rare Disease Day. You're going to meet some great people. So when's the best time to engage? Things like this with this conference. In San Diego, we just had a conference a few days ago, the Festival of Genomics. Go to the breakout sessions, make notes. What I do in my book, the spiral binder that we were all handed out, I take notes, and I know that when I get home, I'm not going to have time to look at my spiral binder. And it will sit on my desk for a very long time. So what I do is I put a star by the actionable items. And when I get home, I make a list of those actionable items, and this is where it gets to the time. And you just need to follow up and send an email. And when you sit next to someone at lunch, exchange business cards with them. The first year we came, I was not prepared to be at the Global Gene Summit. Since then, I have a business card with my name on it and my contact information, and on the back is a scientific description of what the mutation is that my daughter has. So that when people go home and they've met me, they'll remember why they met me. The other thing that my husband made for us is, this is just a trifold. Make one of these for your child's mutation. All it says is what it is, the science, things that you might have done, and then this is about a little bit about my daughter. It gives you something to hand out to people so that when they get home with their spiral binder and they put it on their desk, we're all the same, we're all busy, but you want them to remember your child. So give them something that they can remember you by. The point is to build a relationship with these people and don't let them forget who you are. When my daughter was first I like to say like competing for a clinical trial, the first one we were trying to get her genome sequenced. And I had heard about the project, and I really wanted to get my daughter into it. And I knew that they needed our medical records. So you could just give them a disk of all your medical records, right? But your disk is going to sit with all the other disks. So what I did was I got a very bright pink notebook, fluorescent pink. And I put an 8.5 by 11 picture of my daughter on the front, that she looked like a typical child. And on the back, I showed her picture confined to a wheelchair. So anybody who pulled that notebook out was going to know exactly who the notebook was about. And inside, I didn't just have medical records. I had a letter from her school principal saying that she had above a 3.5 every semester in middle school. And I had poems written by Lily talking about her challenges and why she wanted to be diagnosed. So, and I told my daughter when I made the notebook, my job is to make the woman who's reading this notebook never forget who you are. She will not be able to say no. And my daughter was patient number 1 in that study. So why do we bother doing all of these things? This is an example of what happened to us recently. So I got a newsletter just from Sanford Burnham. We get these newsletters in our household all the time of different places because we sign up for all these newsletters. I want to know what everybody's doing. So I got a newsletter one day, and there was an article in there by Hud Freeze. Has anybody met Hud Freeze here? Yeah. He's a great guy. So I looked up Hud Freeze because I do live in San Diego, which is a benefit, but you guys can call Hud too. He's going to love that I said that. Just call Hud. So I picked up the phone and I called Hud and was nice shocked when Hud picked up the phone. And I said, hi, my name's Gay Grossman. My daughter has a mutation. I just read this article in the Sanford Burnham Portal newsletter, and I want to do what you're doing with my daughter. And I said, tell me what you're doing with NGLI1. I want to learn about what the Might family's doing. And Matt Might is here too with Christina, and I encourage you to seek them out too because they're great. Since then, I have them on my advisory board. So I said, how did they get to do this? And how are they doing this in your lab? And we talked, and Hud said, I'll just keep this information in mind. So I followed up with an email. I sent him information on my daughter's mutation. He invited us to a conference he was having on NGLI1 and rare disease. This is months later. Had nothing to do with ADCY5, but we went. We met people, we met families. He called me up and he said, you know, I have this conference and I would really like to have a patient family there. Would you and Steve be willing to go and maybe have a poster? And could you talk for like 5 minutes about having a child with a rare disease? These are scientists and a lot of them have never met a family before that have a rare disease. And I said, sure. So I went and we spoke. There were probably 25 people in the room. And this woman came up to me afterwards and she said, I'm with ASBMB. I had never heard of it. I mean, I don't really read biochemistry newsletters that often. But I met this woman and she said, hey, would you be interested in writing an article from the parent's perspective, a letter to scientists? I said, sure. And she said, how about 600 words? And I said, okay. So I sent her 1,600. And she printed my whole thing. She printed the whole letter. From that, I have a doctor in Germany now, and since this letter is when our stem cells were made, but we are now corresponding with a doctor in Germany who is just chomping at the bit to get these stem cells once they're developed. They'll be ready next summer. And he wants these stem cells because he wants to go back and study ADCY5 because he started the research years ago, but he didn't have enough to keep going, so he started another project. But the doctor in Germany who's going to do these studies on ADCY5 all came about because I picked up a newsletter and I called HUD. So do you see how it all just comes together? So just engage with people. You want them to know who you are. You want them to know what your mutation is. When people see me, I want them to think ADCY5. So we share our story a lot. We were fortunate enough that our daughter was the first one diagnosed through whole genome sequencing at Scripps in La Jolla. And because of that, we got a lot of press from it. But we use that to our advantage as a family, every little bit that we can to get the mutation out, to connect with families, to find other families. As I told you, my daughter was the second one with ADCY5, and there are over 100 families now who have been diagnosed with ADCY5 all around the world. The stem cells that we made are not only from families in America, they're from Canada, Australia, the Netherlands, Germany. I do not have a science background other than, I think I took earth science in 9th grade, biology 10th grade. I think that's pretty much where it ended. So you can do this too. Here's my email. Feel free to connect with me, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Gabe, very much. Thank you. Now, before we open it up to questions from the audience, I wanted to pose a couple questions to both of you. Margie, representing a rare disease that's kind of more well-known, it's been around for decades, and Gabe, with a brand new mutation, only been around for a few years. How do you approach the conversation with researchers, depending on the newness of your disease? What have you learned? And then if you can follow up sharing with a brand new disease, how does that conversation look when you first reach out? Well, with a more legacy disease, I would assume they reach out to you at this point.
I don't understand the question.
When you reach out to these researchers,
right.
and with such a well-known disease as Batten's,
What?
how many of you have diseases that have been found in the last 5 years?
Okay.
So we have a few new, and how many have been with diseases that have been known for at least a decade or more? So the conversation, when you reach out to researchers with a more well-known disease,
right.
How do you approach, if you see a researcher in a journal article, let's say, what is that conversation? What do you say to them to start that conversation with them?
Well, again, it depends on what you want. Typically, parents are reaching out to researchers to find out what the latest research is because they're interested in how far away we are from a meaningful treatment. And so I think you can find that information in a variety of ways. If there is an association for your disease, they should have that information. We certainly do. I have those conversations all the time. And then I often direct people to the researchers who are working in that area. Sometimes parents find them on their own. Gay gave amazing information about how to network the information. And so there are a variety of ways that you can find them. Email is probably best, my guess. If you don't If you hear back, that's great. If you don't, I would reach out again. Phone call, maybe. I'm also a fan of academic department secretaries and admins. They are often the schedulers and hunter-downers of people. I think it's probably the same in corporations, in pharmas. It's just a matter of finding them and then starting to ask your questions. And I think generally people, once you get them, they're patient and they're interested in talking to you, and everybody is really busy, and in academia especially, there's a tenure track, there are grants to write, there are classes to teach, and there are labs to run. However, nobody is busier than a rare disease parent. So remember that. You're the busiest one in the room. So just keep at it. Just keep at it. I'm sure that there are people who didn't call you back quickly
I just called them again.
at times. Of course you did.
And the question I was going to
Of
ask you
course you
guys,
did.
how often do you call them back? What is a fair amount of time, do you think? Because you don't want to hound them too much. However,
Well,
you do want to get an answer.
To be honest with you, we have enough churning in our organization right now that I don't really have that, to be honest with you. What we do is we find the people who are interested and willing to help, and we pursue that. But the outreach that we do, obviously, is to find other families. We need to find other families. We need a critical mass so people can study what the biology is of this mutation. That's our goal right now. And we do that with social media. People find us within 12 hours of being mutated, or finding the mutation. They call us within 12 hours. We've heard from families. So the tip that I would give you is, if you don't have an organization, I mean, ADCY5 didn't, this is just us. This is my husband and me and some other families. And you can do that too. And go on Facebook and make a Facebook page and name it after your mutation. I mean, if I had named it, Lily's mutation or something like that, nobody's looking for Lily. They're looking for ADCY5, right? So I also, I knew that we had a family in the Netherlands. Well, they speak Dutch. I don't speak Dutch. I don't know about you guys, but I don't speak Dutch. And so what I did was I just put the standard sentence that I have on our Facebook page that says, this is a place for families and scientists to come together and learn about ADCY5. I cut and pasted it. I put it in Google Translation for Dutch. I made it an ADCY5.org page for the Netherlands, and I posted that in there. And I can't post a lot in Dutch, so a lot of my articles are just on. It just takes them to our page. And I made one for France too.
They speak a lot of English.
They do, yeah.
So
it just leads them back to us, and that's what you want to do. You just want to find people. And as far as it being a new mutation, how we do that differently, we just assume that nobody knows what it is. And we just talk to them about it, and we say, this is a well-known pathway, and it's linked to Parkinson's, and that's, that perks up a lot of ears. But we just keep talking. We just keep talking about it and meeting people, and we follow up. When I was sitting in another breakout session, or right after the breakout session, I sat down and I went on LinkedIn and I connected with every single speaker that's here at this conference. And I would encourage you all to do that. And it's not because you want to harass them and call them all. You want to see what they're posting. You want to look at your LinkedIn feed and see what they're doing and see if there's anything that might connect with you. And you want them to see what you're posting.
the other thing I'd follow up with is that for those of you with a disease that has been identified 5 or fewer years and you're just getting started, we all just started around a kitchen table. My group started in Washington State with about 8 families that found each other through neurologists before cell phones and the internet. So it's a building. It's a constant building. And I'm a nonprofit director of a well-regarded, established organization, and I will help you. And I have many peers here who will also help you to get organized, bite off a little at a time. You don't have to know everything. You don't have to know everything all at once. Just a little bit at a time. And great things can happen. And great things happen every day in our office. It's incredible. So I have some resources as well. The Genetic Alliance page, I think, is really good. Lots of nonprofit directors talking about a variety of things. The Global Genes Alliance page is going to be even bigger and better because of Carrie. And there are resources out there to help you.
Well, thank you guys very much. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
I have a question regarding, this might not be necessary.
Oh, Ashley's going to bring you a mic. Because we have some friends on live stream who we want to be able to hear your question.
Hi, thank you for the great conversation here. And my question might be not necessarily for how to connect with the scientists and the researchers, but also how to be successful in raising money for these researchers, because most probably these researchers will not do much unless you were to provide some sort of money to them. And we've heard that from Hudson Freeze, who is doing CDG research, which is what my son has. However, he was upfront with us and said, in the US, you won't get much done unless you give us at least $100,000. So is there a resource that would show successful fundraisers or ideas that would help parents know how to do fundraising?
That's a great question. Do you want to tackle that one first?
Well, my answer will probably be much different than your answer.
You go first.
And this will surprise many of you, but we do not fundraise. And the reason that we don't fundraise is because I could spend all day long trying to raise $100,000. And $100,000 for what we need to find a treatment for ADCY5 is not enough to start a day. So we focus our efforts on helping people with grants and supporting them with grants. And what I mean by that is we will write a letter and say adcy5.org. We're doing this right now with our clinician. She wants to do a natural history study. So we are writing a letter. We contacted families so that she could have the information that she needed to put into her grant to get the money to do the clinical trial. And for us, we find that's the best way to use our time. There's no way we could raise the money. The stem cell project that we did was $60,000 a family. And we had 13 families. I mean, we just couldn't raise the money. So we have to do it through clinical trial, through grants and organizations that have that.
And it could change over time. You just don't know. I will say that we do small grants often, and we've been successful at $30,000 makes a difference to a researcher. They have a patchwork of funding that runs a lab, and $30,000 or $40,000 could get them started on a mouse model. It could get them started if they've already got a lab going. And with the goal of getting NIH funding, and with luck, some pharma coming in as well is interested. This happens. It's happened for us. It can happen for you. And again, I think small amounts can make a difference.
I would just, sorry. First of all, you guys are amazing. I work with Scott in the Rare Disease Center of Excellence. And Margie, one of the things you said about researchers is so important. And that is, researchers are there because they love to do what they do. And so, one of the resources that we use for the rare diseases is we certainly scour PubMed.gov. So the NIH and the federal government fund the National Library of Medicine.
Yep.
PubMed.gov is a tremendous resource to find people around the world that are publishing in things you have never heard of, because they track everything. And I can tell you numerous times where we have reached out to a researcher in Singapore or Romania who is doing research in things that are so unique. They love those calls. Nobody calls them. Nobody calls and says, hey, I love what you're doing in this rare disease. And so you would be surprised at how willing they are to overcome the barriers to connect with you, whether that's language or timelines or whatever. And so I would encourage you, if you are researching a new disease, if you're just trying to find anybody that's out there that's working in your disease, to go to PubMed.gov. It is far more helpful than Google itself. So, but those folks that you connect to, that's what they do, right? They didn't do it just for fun, so.
And I just want to add something else to that. And another thing is, because I talked to a lot of you, advocates who are in various stages of your research, whether you're beginning or whether you've been doing this a long time, is there's also, you'll find a nice balance of personalizing yourself and your mission with the researcher. And using HUD as a perfect example, he has pictures on his wall of the kids that he's fighting for. And I've talked to a number of advocates, some of you are in this room, who when they can connect a face to the work they're doing, they are so much more passionate about it and they can get more people involved. We have one advocate who, by just like Gay, was able to connect with an amazing researcher from Switzerland and shared their story with them. And not only did this researcher start a project for them, but they found funding through a grant to bring on a grad student, and now they're probably about 2 years ahead of where they would have been if they had just sent out a letter and didn't really personalize their story. So I do think it's important for you to make that personal connection and find that balance, because you don't want to cry to them, but it is important to make it yourself a real face.
So when HUD invited me to go see his lab, do you think I went to see his lab? And I know HUD doesn't study my daughter Lily, but there's a picture of Lily in HUD's lab.
He's a good guy.
He's a great guy.
He's also on our medical science advisory board, so that's how I kind of know him. But
it's all about making the personal connection and just getting to know people. And it doesn't matter if they're studying your mutation or not, because maybe next year they might know somebody who wants to study something. So just meet a lot of people and share your information and keep in touch with people. And when you read an article, then you think, oh, you know, I met that person at Global Genes. I bet they'd really like that. Send them the article. Just keep in touch with people. Share information.
And you're really not alone. And I hope for those of you that are new here, I know those of you that have been to this number of years, we have a lot in common. There may be 7,000 rare diseases, and we may all think we're alone in our own little worlds, but many of our diseases are related. They may be related in the ways we do research, in symptomatology, just as you said, in our lysosomal storage disease community, which we share. There's 50 diseases. They all have their different aspects. But there's commonalities in research that we can all come together with. So do reach out to other advocates here and find out, talk to them about their diseases, because you may find a connection where you can collaborate. And of course, that's our Global Genes philosophy, as everybody knows. I see everybody shaking their heads.
Right.
Collaboration, especially in rare disease research, is so important because there is limited money and there is limited time. And I know everybody's exhausted because you're pursuing it so passionately. So I wanted to share any final thoughts, if you guys want to share anything else with our fellow advocates and friends.
Are we running out of time? Do we have time for any more questions?
Oh, I'm sorry, Cindy.
I'd love to answer questions.
Thanks. Hi.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No. You
oh,
got the
Gina.
mic.
Hi, I'm the executive director with the Alport Syndrome Foundation. We are fortunate that we are at the place where Dr. Ring said it so perfectly yesterday, where we want to be sure that we are telling science what we want from them. We've attracted a lot of researchers to the Alport Syndrome space, and now we are setting goals. We are very inspired by the Global Gene Workshop in Philly with Dr. Fajgenbaum. We're assembling a panel of patients and researchers together, and we're first sending surveys to patients and researchers and then assembling a panel to help us set goals. And those goals are going to help outline how ASF is funding research, but we want it to go broader than that. We want to communicate these goals that are patient-centric to researchers of Alport syndrome across the world. Obviously, we have greater influence with the researchers who we are funding. What is the best way to reach out and really accurately communicate to those who are doing research the needs and the desires of patients? You know, we've had people say things like, well, there's a treatment for Alport syndrome. They can have a transplant. That's maybe in an academic sense a treatment, but that's not certainly what patients want. How do we, open researchers' minds to patient-centered research and outcomes, and how do we communicate these goals with some goal for them to implement them?
Am I taking that one?
Sure.
Okay. I have a couple ideas. Is there a time when those researchers are together?
In some meetings, yes.
Okay, good. You should show up. You could see if you could be a speaker at that meeting and talk about stories of your patients. You would be compelling. develop a poster for the poster session on a possibly, a needs assessment or a survey that you've done with your community to talk about what they say their needs are. It's not just transplant. That could be, actually, that's a brilliant title for a poster. It's not just transplant, and really outline what that looks like. If you could have some quantitative data with your qualitative data, that would be powerful, I think. That poster could then become part of your talk. Keep using, don't rewrite everything all the time. You can recycle a lot of this information that you're doing. Put it on your website. If you have a specific spreadsheet of researchers, you can do constant contact blasts to them of that kind of thing. It's kind of re-educating them about what your needs are, and having the dialogue. How can we get past this idea that it's just transplant? We've got other needs, find out, sort of have a dialogue with them about what they think that is, and then maybe there's some small seed funding opportunities that you could help them start building that. So you're looking at what you want is to go from this answer to an array. Yeah.
Our final question right over here, and then we...
I actually don't have a question. I just thought I would share a success story in my family, because I'm looking back at Gay to where you are, and that was my family 40 years ago. And I was diagnosed with Gaucher in the mid-'70s, and it was rare, and there was no treatment. And my mother started making calls and searching and trying to find who can help. And she found Dr. Roscoe Brady at the National Institutes of Health. And, I was a 13-year-old angry teenager, but brought me down for 2 weeks every 6 months to do research. And I did that for years. And finally, 15 years later, there was a trial at the NIH, and it was for the first treatment for Gaucher disease, and I was part of that trial. And a treatment got approved, and over the years, I got healthier, my mother got happier, and more trials and more research. And so I've been in several drug trials, I've been in several research trials, I'm starting another one next month, and I'm healthy and I'm happy, but I still think it's important to participate in this because there's other families who don't have the help or they don't know of the help. Even with social media now, they're scared and confused. And also because I think participating in stuff like this helps raise awareness for all rare diseases and helps to understand how every disease needs more treatments and more options and more research. And so I'm 40 years after you, and I think you're going to have, I'm hoping, a wonderful, frightening, hard, but wonderful road ahead.
I am confident that someday my daughter is going to be sitting there talking like
I hope
you are.
so.
That's a great way to end this.
That's a great ending. Well done.
Margie and Gay will be here throughout the week, and I believe you're both coming to the gala with us as well.
Yeah.
So please, if you have any additional questions, reach out to them. You're always welcome to reach out to me and our advocacy team. And thank you guys very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.